knowing the balance of your account going forward allows you to really forecast to understand whether or not you can afford the help you're seeking to get. Hi everyone, it's Tina with Picture It Personal Finance. I am a financial coach who helps solopreneurs win with money. I help them get to a point with their finances that they are able to consistently pay themselves, have money set aside for taxes, and have room in their business to reinvest and grow that business. As I work with clients, one of the most common questions that I see come up is the question of, can I afford to get help? In a prior video, I talked about some of the growing pains that entrepreneurs will have, especially when we're in the bootstrap and DIY mode of our business. When we are in that very first stage, all we care about is getting some clients, and you're kind of just attacking business where you're like, whatever it takes to get the next paying client. But at some point you start to get consistent renewals or referrals or new clients coming in where you recognize, well, holy smokes, a lot of the work that I was doing by myself, I no longer have the time, no matter how great my time management is, or no matter how efficient my routines are, because I am simply doing too much. I have too much client work going on. Now, when you get to that point, the question is, okay, let's get some help. And in order to get the help, in order to understand whether or not you can hire that help, you have to know a few things. You have to know A, whether or not you can afford them, B, what kind of work do you want to delegate out? And then C, what is the priority of that work? So as you decide to delegate things out, in what order should you find people to help you? I'm going to tackle each of those three questions in this video. And I'm going to start with the one that is the most pressing. The first question is, how do you know if you can afford to hire help? There's several questions that you have to ask yourself. And as you're asking yourself those questions and finding those answers, I really want to encourage you to consider employing what I call a cash flow budget. I have a separate video on a cash flow budget that I will link for you guys, but having a cash flow budget really makes it so much easier for you to intuitively see what is going to be the balance of your account going forward. And knowing the balance of your account going forward allows you to really forecast to understand whether or not you can afford the help you're seeking to get. Okay. So as you're looking at whether or not you can afford to hire somebody, as you're contemplating whether or not you can afford to hire something, here are the questions you have to ask yourself. First, what are your monthly recurring expenses? What are the things that come up every single month, and what is that going to do to your bank balance from now until the end of the year, let's say? In addition to the recurring monthly expenses, you need to know what are the big ticket items that are coming up. So for example, with me, one of the big ticket items that comes around for me every February is renewing my errors and omission insurance and my liability insurance. Those two insurance together for me are around $1,000. Add in cybersecurity and it's a little bit more to boot. All of those renew for me in February and in March. So when I'm planning whether or not I can afford something, I always make sure that if I'm going to spend that money in November or December, what is that going to do to my bank balance in January and February? So, okay, you've got the first one, knowing how much your monthly expenses are. And then number two, knowing how much your big ticket annual expenses are and when they're going to hit your account. The next thing that's important to know is, how do you plan to pay for the service that you're looking to get? Now, if you're like me, you are wanting to do a debt-free business. You guys, I'm such an advocate for this. I love debt-free businesses, especially for very simple solopreneur models. There is no requirement for you to have financing. I know it's a little bit different for those of you who are in manufacturing or who are trying to finance a facility. So keep in mind, I'm not saying you have to stay debt-free, especially if you're looking to go into a brick and mortar type business. But for many of us that want to stay debt-free, you have to ask yourself, okay, if I do have a credit card, will I use that to pay for my client? There are some benefits to using a credit card for cash flow management. I would recommend on the personal finance side, I want to discourage use of a credit card that isn't something you can pay off regularly. We don't want to use credit cards for ongoing debt that accumulates, especially if they're part of operating expenses. We want to use credit cards mostly for big investments, which kind of leads me into the next part of hiring help. How are you going to pay for the help in terms of what is it that their billing model? Some people will say, hey, I will do this for a project and that project will cost X dollar amount, and it's a one-time fee, but coming out of that project, you will gain something that is going to help you grow your business. This is an example of where using a credit card might make sense, right? Because it's a one-time investment that then you can calculate a return on investment for that. Comparatively, maybe it's somebody that you're going to hire in perpetuity, like you want this person around always. Maybe it's a virtual assistant. In that situation, it might be that they operate under a retainer model. So you're going to pay them X dollar amount every single month with the expectation that they're going to take over certain responsibilities that you will give to them. And then the last model that I see pretty frequently is an hourly model. You hire somebody to do a specific task, but the amount of money that you have to spend on that task will fluctuate depending on how much time they put in. So for example, bookkeepers a lot of times will say, I charge $50 an hour, or I charge $100 an hour. And so in that regard, if you know that it will take them 4 hours a month to get your books up to date, then you have a great guide on how much it's really going to cost you every month in order to have that additional support. So again, I'm just going to recap what those questions are. The first one is, what are your recurring monthly bills? The next one is, what are the big ticket items that are coming up that are not monthly recurring, so irregular, but yet bills that you know come up every year? The next one is, how will you pay for this person? And the decision for how to pay for them is often tied to what is their billing model. Are they a retainer? Are they a one-time project? Or are they an hourly payment? When you know all of those things, you are able to populate that information into a cash flow budget, and that will help you better understand whether or not you can carry forward that support going forward. So for example, I might want to hire a bookkeeper, and I am going to hire a bookkeeper that's on a retainer model and charges me $350 a month. I will then take that $350, I will add that to my regular recurring expenses and just forecast that in my budget out for several months. It is my recommendation that you always have about 3 months worth of operating expenses at your disposal. That way, if you are dealing with variable income in your business, you're able to sort of handle that high and low a bit and make sure that you're able to consistently pay. Often the recommendation for your low cost business model, so online service-based businesses is a great example, would be to have 2 months of operating expense. I like to err on the side of caution, so I'm always talking about maybe having 3 months worth of operating expense set aside, but you wanna make sure that you have enough money in your bank to be able to support that particular extra bit of assistance. You wanna make sure that you have enough money in your bank to be able to fund that support with enough time to at least meet their contract, right? So if the contract says that you have to give them 30 days notice in order to terminate the contract, or some of them will say 60 days notice in order to terminate the contract, then you want to make sure that you have at least 30 days or 60 days worth of operating expense to cover them for the amount of time that it will take you to pay them at the point of contract termination. So those are the things to keep in mind when it comes to being able to afford paying somebody to help you. Now, the next question might be, okay, well, what are the things that I should delegate out? And I have to tell you that one of the things that I see people delegating out frequently that I feel is a mistake is anything that is what I would call sort of your CEO responsibilities. As a matter of fact, one of my coaches has outright said to many of us in her program, do not delegate CEO. And what that means is there are certain aspects of your business that you're not going to want to delegate out, because if you are, especially if you're an online service provider, you are looking to connect with people and establish trust with people on being authentic in who you are and displaying that with consistency. So some of the ways that you demonstrate who you are and give that feeling of authenticity is by making sure that you have a consistent voice. Anything that ends up representing the voice of your company, those things should not be delegated out, unless the only way that I could see it is if maybe you are delegating out social media creation, things that you can use in social media, and you've got one thing that you've already produced and you're asking them to break it up and piecemeal it out so that you can get into more social media platforms without the voice being eroded. Another thing not to delegate is any strategic decision making. So if you are, say you're going to do a course launch, you do not want to delegate out any of the decisions on how much to charge for the course, what should be the voice of the marketing for the course. You are not going to want to delegate out who your ideal client is. Don't have somebody else tell you who your ideal client is. You know who that is. You know who to talk to them, because that is who you're serving today, who you enjoy serving today. Do not delegate out your consultations with clients. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some people who will say, hey, I have somebody that does a quick Q&A session with prospects, and then if that works out and they need a full consultation, they will kind of like do an initial screening and then send them to me. But if you are doing a one-on-one sort of coaching or consulting program, or if you are doing something where you are delivering a highly customized product or service to a series of clients, you are going to be the person who can best represent what that customized service looks and feels like in a consultation. So you do not want to delegate that out. And lastly, product creation. Anything that you are looking to create, anything that is that creative voice or that authentic depiction of who you are as a business and service provider, you want those things to come from you. Now, the fulfillment of that product, you can delegate out different aspects of that. But the design of it, the creation of it, that should fall squarely on your shoulders. Okay, so now that you know there are these sort of high important CEO level tasks, what are some of the tasks that you could more easily delegate out? Well, those would be the things like the tweaking of things that have already been done, the management of your calendar, the management of the design of your website, the support of your website, responding to comments and acknowledging comments on your social media platforms, the posting of social media things, so like posts or snippets, reels, whatever it is that you're working on that are crafted from something that you've already copywritten or you've already produced so that it has that cohesive voice, the scheduling out posts, things like this. These are all tasks that I see frequently come up that can very easily be delegated out. In this way, you are freeing yourself up time, but those are sort of low value tasks that for many business owners essentially become busy work. And you'll often know that they are busy work because, and this is to answer the last question that I wanted to pose to you guys today, the question of how do you prioritize the tasks that get delegated? Okay, so now you understand that there are high value CEO type tasks and there are low value tasks that could be delegated out. You might ask yourself, okay, what are the things that I should be delegating out? How do I prioritize what I can hand off to other people? My advice to you is this: look for those things that you procrastinate on or that you resist doing. Very frequently, we have these items that we're really, really great at. We do them and we gel at them. And when we are doing them, we feel just completely absorbed in the moment and time flies. These are things that I think this terminology has maybe been overused, but these are things that fall within your zone of genius. Then you have tasks that also fall into your zone of competence. They're not as exciting to do, they're not as fulfilling to do, but you can do them well, and you can do them efficiently, and they don't become a pain point for you. And then you've got those other tasks, those tasks that you resist, that you don't like doing, that they end up just getting moved over on your to-do list from day to day to day because they frustrate you. They're hard for you, they're challenging, they are something that you have internal resistance toward doing. These are the tasks that really you ought to hire somebody to help you. So for some people, that might be the bookkeeping, that might be the web design, that might be the scheduling things out on social media. Whatever it is for you, identify what those tasks are and then figure out how much it would cost for you to get help in getting those tasks delegated out to somebody else. If you do that in those ways, then you will have answered the questions of, can I afford to get the help? What are the important tasks that I need to keep so that I don't delegate my CEO? And then what are the tasks that I want to offload to somebody else because they are a serious pain point in my business? All right, everyone, I hope this video has been a help to you. If you are curious to work with me and get more insights like this for your business, feel free to schedule a consultation. I am taking clients now, and I would love to hear from you. You guys have a great day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.